Good morning, good afternoon, welcome to Jodi ASMR or R. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel for the first time. If you are new here, please press the subscribe button. If you would like to help the channel out, I would really appreciate that. It would help me out, and it would help the channel out, and it's free. Now, if you like this kind of whispered content, hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up button. And if you don't like this kind of content, you don't have to listen to it. That's all. So just, I guess, move on if you don't like it. But if you find it weird, you've got to give it a chance, because ASMR is kind of weird, but it's only weird until you actually understand it. So I believe that ASMR is so healthy and so healing that I love it. I listen to it all the time. I really do. So today we're gonna use Eye Candy's matcha green. Matcha green. Matcha green. Alright, some matcha green. We're going to use the Pearl X Antique Silver. Pearl X Antique Silver. Pearl X Antique Silver. And we're going to use Stardust, which I really like. Stardust by Resin Art. And this is kind of a neat blue. It's like a baby blue, but I don't know if you can see, but it has more of a crystal-like or glittery look. It's chunkier than your regular mica powder, but mica powder. Now these are what I made when you guys I did not film. So this is what I kind of I've been at an art show all weekend, and it was really fun. We did really well. Now this is the bloom that I made. Look how pretty that is. See my window. So there's the bloom. Now last night I made this bloom. It has actually a flower logo on it. I don't know if that's the right way I should do it, but it's really pretty. Anyway, it gives it a little bit, it's not so slippery, so it gives it a little bit of grip. That's what I do like about it. It doesn't just it's not just, slippery like this one is, just smooth and glass. And I think that's one reason why people don't necessarily buy these, because they are slippery. As a coaster, but you can put your coffee on it. This is all food grade resin, so. Alright. There's a fly over there, and there's a spider crawling by my shoulder. So this morning, we go to get coffee, and I turn on my headlights, and there are 2 deer right, not even 10 feet from us. Now, we had been talking about this skunk that had been in the yard, and how much we were making tons of noise, and we were just talking about the skunk and how it stunk, but now it doesn't smell and all this stuff. And I turned on the lights, and these deer were right there. Never ran so many different supplies, so many places. I don't always buy from Amazon. I do find that most of the stuff I want is on Amazon. So now these are the bowls that I made, which I really like. I used my new temperature gauge, and they came out really neat. I don't know if you can see them. But, and there's my amethyst. The only thing I didn't like was how, I think if it was a little bit cooler, I think it was a little bit hot, is it made these little holes here, just a few, maybe not on this one, it didn't, it's weird. But on a couple others, there is quite a, I think on this one, but I mean, they came out beautiful, look how pretty they are. And I got some great compliments. I mean, everyone loved the art. So see how pretty that is. How it bloomed in there. So I really love that. Look. So all the bowls are set for $45 if anybody's interested. I love to sell the bowls. Everybody liked them. They're food grade. You can eat soup out of them. You can eat ice cream, chips, salsa. I mean, you can use them for dip. You can use them for candies. You can use them pretty much for anything. Just hand wash them. Now here is the ones I made last night. And this is the ice white with the matcha and the onion green, and a little bit of that stardust blue, but not very much. I mean, honestly, I barely see it up close. But maybe in the others, it just kind of melts with the blue ice. So, and remember, you can always fast forward to the first story. You don't have to listen to the resin stuff. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to record myself making the resin, and then I'm going to do scary stories on top of that. So I'll explain what I'm doing, and then I will just record the scary stories on top of the video so you can see what I'm doing, but listen to the scary stories at the same time. Okay? So we'll try that out, and if y'all like that, then I'll do that from now on, because I think that with this new mic, it does drown out the sound, and it sounds a lot louder, which is nice. So, if you like this way of recording, comment in the comment section with a heart smiley face or a sad face for you don't like it. So heart for you do like it, smiley face, or a sad face that you don't like it. The Stairs in the Doorway by Eric Dodd. I've never considered myself a nosy person. No more nosy than the next guy. I just have what my mother would consider a unhealthy amount of curiosity. I was the kid who climbed to the top of the big oak in the backyard just to see what was in the crow's nest. I was the kid who dug a hole in the backyard so deep that I hit water because I was convinced there was a cave under our house. And I wanted to see it. I wanted to see. My parents aren't dirt poor. really tough on me about college. He never went. Nobody in his family had. So there were a few fights about where I would go after school. Oh, it was a huge shock to me when just after graduation he drove me down to the university. He'd been classmates with the dean, and they'd come up with an arrangement where I would get a full scholarship provided I made good grades and worked for the university. I never felt like a scholar in high school. I kept my head down and did enough to just get by. But I pulled off B's and a few C's. I wasn't interested in learning, really, because learning wasn't interesting. But university was different. I took mainly core classes, math, English, history, science, but they were fascinating. For one thing, nobody cared if I showed up or not. It was entirely up to me to succeed, and so I did. In exchange for my education, I worked security and did some light maintenance duties. Maintenance was a no-brainer. I've always been handy, and most of the fix-it jobs were the type that could be solved with the liberal application of WD-40 or elbow grease, or both. Security was a different story. Security gave me superpowers. The job itself was pretty easy. I got a uniform, a badge, a flashlight, and my mother gave me some keychain mace for my birthday. No, I didn't get a gun if you're curious. They weren't allowed on campus anyway, but I wasn't actually a policeman. I worked mostly nights and weekends and doubles during my holiday breaks. I was to walk around the campus twice a night, check the labs, computer center, and library. The rest of my time was pretty much whatever I wanted to do. There were two other guards, Jake and Al, but they worked different shifts from me. We had overlap nights, quote-unquote, on Wednesday nights where we'd get together for about an hour to discuss any major events or changes. There might have been some beer at those meetings. I'm not sure I remember since I'm underage and you can't prove anything. Jake worked mostly day shift and Al worked swings and some overnights during the week. Jake was a younger guy training to be on the local police force. He took his job pretty seriously. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure Al mostly slept during his shifts. I was 2 years older than Dirt, so he deserved his rest. Remember that bit about superpowers? Yeah, on my first night on the job, Al gave me a huge keychain with about 1,000 keys on it. This thing weighed nearly 5 pounds. It was secured to my belt with a heavy-duty metal chain. Don't lose that keychain, kid, Al said. You got the keys to the kingdom right there. Any doors that don't open, you don't. And I mean you don't want to go in. Odd, but I felt cool. I had all these keys to the entire university. My work, hobby, the thing that kept me awake on those long, cold winter nights was exploring. I made it a point every night to open some door that I'd never opened before. I started in the news section, where the library and the computer center were, opening each room one at a time. Each closet, making a map in my mind of where these rooms were, everything that was in them. Some nights I might have explored 2 or 3 rooms. Some nights I might not have had time for anything more than an odd, out-of-the-way broom closet. The university is actually pretty large for having a full student body of only 12 or 1,300. It was built as a Methodist college in 1896 and became state-owned in the 30s. There were 3 main sections: the old schoolhouse, the administration, offices, and a few unlucky classrooms. Unlucky due to the lack of central heat and air, and the 3-story building had no elevators. The labs were a brutalist horror of poured concrete slabs and tiny, tiny, tiny windows. Built radiators were in style. Built back in the 70s, and buildings that look like Soviet radiators were in style. The new library was steadily losing its new look, built in the 1990s boom and made in that unique red brick and glass style, like everything else during those years. When I think back to those early days, the days before, I think how stupid I was, how naive. I should have thought about winter. I should have thought about those winter solstice nights. By December of my sophomore year of college, I had cleared every room in the new library. Yes, I had opened every door, checked every closet, and I had a good mental map of the whole building. It was ultimately pretty unimpressive. I found no buried treasure, no secret stash of missing computer supplies cached in a forgotten closet. I did find a small, sweaty stack of bad porn mags in a supply closet in the basement level. Wicked, wicked cowgirls. Who was I to judge? Whatever. December is a slow month for the university. After the mad rush of finals, the campus was suddenly deserted. The remaining few staff members seemed, lost. The building stood silent and dark in the thin winter breeze. We had a steady series of snowstorms, but none bad enough to close the campus entirely. I made sure the sidewalks were clear and the entryway salted, and otherwise tried to stay indoors. Besides, I had the old school to explore. The old school. The main old school building, Downing Hall, was a 4-story V-shaped building. It had no elevators, tiny stairwells, and was only exempted from ADA compliance due to its historical importance, if you can believe that shit. It had no air conditioning, save for sporadic window mount units, and they were only permitted to be installed in the rear of the building, so as not to spoil the building's historic charm. The building's heat came from a massive ancient boiler in the basement. As far as I knew, I was the only person who knew anything about the boiler room. He must have kept it in good condition, because honestly, I've never heard of any complaints about it. I spent the second week after finals week, poking through the top floors of Downing Hall. I didn't have a lot of time for exploring every night, as the snow gave me more than the usual upkeep chores. But I made steady progress. I discovered a small room in the attic on the left wing that must have been an old dean's office, complete with a beautiful antique desk and wardrobe. I checked both, thinking I might find something historic, but I didn't. To give save for a month. Moth-eaten wool scarf. And the desk's contents were limited to a few old newspapers and some tax forms from the 1950s. A level below on the building's fourth floor, I found 2 dozen small empty classrooms. In my handyman mid-set, I checked the windows for loose glass panes and for water or rodent damage. I fully expected to see rat droppings or at least some insect damage, yet I found none. The second and third floors are much the same, except the rooms on the rear of the building were air-conditioned and thus actively used for classes when school was in session. The main floor was administration, included the dean's office. I thought it wise not to snoop around in my boss's office or in payroll. I skipped a lot of these rooms. I did have some common sense. I made my way to the stairwell to the basement, used my superhero power keychain, opened the heavy door, and I proceeded to descend down into the darkness. Now, the basement of Downing Hall was different from that of the new library. For one thing, it's a lot more cramped. The hallway was narrow and the ceiling was low, with doorways leading off at regular intervals. But I checked every room, flipping the old 2-button switches on, using my flashlight in the dark corners. I had carried a few packs of spare light bulbs, the fancy new CFC bulbs in my satchel, thinking to replace any that had burned out and save the environment while I was at it. The little rooms mostly contained junk, spare desks, filing cabinets full of 40, 50-year-old papers, old holiday decorations, and so forth, lit by naked hanging bulbs. I'm not an imaginative kind of guy. I guess I'm pretty smart. I made straight A's in my college courses. It never occurred to me to be scared. I didn't think I'm alone in a creepy old basement. This was my university, my place, my job, my hobby, and it all seemed so, well, normal. By the night of the 20th of December, I had made my way to the boiler room. The furnace was a massive monstrosity of iron and rivets, pipes, and gauges. It was hellishly hot in that room and equally loud. However, the room was neat and extremely clean. Al kept this room that way because he said a clean boiler lets you get more shut-eye. The furnace had converted from coal to gas at some point, but the soot had stained the walls of the room, and the old coal chute still opened in one of the corners. I had no intention of giving the boiler room more than a glance. I'd been there dozens of times, and there was nothing to see, just a workbench and the furnace itself, until I noticed one night a small door to the back and left, behind the furnace. That's weird, I thought to myself. I had never seen that door before. But then again, I had never stood in that exact spot. Beside the workbench, I had never really looked. The door was smaller than a normal door, maybe 5 feet tall, painted in the same non-colored drab gray-brown of the walls, made of metal just like the other doors in the basement. I went over to it and touched the handle. I think my body knows sometimes when things are wrong. Have you ever had that feeling, that unmistakable eerie sense, the weird feeling in the pit of your stomach like you're being watched? When you know you're completely, totally, and utterly alone, and nobody can see you, but you feel eyes heavy upon your body. Have you ever gone left instead of right because you got a feeling that you just shouldn't go right that day? Well, it didn't work like that for me. When I touched that doorknob, nothing felt any different. My head didn't hurt, my stomach didn't turn, the neck hairs didn't closely and saw a small keyhole. I checked my magic keychain and found 3 possible matches. Struck out at the first 2 and the third worked. Of course. The hinges squeaked like they had not been in a long time. Been opened in a long time. My handyman instincts noted it. WD-40, I noted. I hauled open the door and stepped through into another small, cramped hallway. The light switch worked, and the single bulb blew with a crack. Damn it. My hackles did raise then. I flicked on my flashlight and quickly swapped out the hallway bulb with a brand new one. I looked around and saw this hallway was narrow, straight, and ended a few yards away at another door. This door opened easily onto another stairway. What the hell? I said. Nobody had ever mentioned a sub-basement for this building. The hairs on the back of my neck were still standing straight up. I shook it off his nerves from the blowing bulb and walked into the stairwell. It was a standard stairwell and looked pretty much the same as the others in the building. I walked to the bottom and met another door. I pushed through it to see another long, narrow hallway with doors leading off to either side at regular intervals. The first door to my left was unlocked and opened fairly easily onto a storage closet. There were stacks of late 60s era books, a few desks, and decaying mop and its bucket. A decaying mop in its bucket. The door across from it was unlocked, but did not open so easily. I hauled the door open to find a larger room that looked to have been used for a classroom. There were desks, a blackboard, anatomical diagrams, and posters on the wall. Everything covered in an inch of dust. It appeared to have not been touched in a very long time. Why would anyone put a classroom down here? I mumbled to myself. How would they even convince students to get down here in the first place? I remembered thinking at that point that I must have somehow discovered a back way into the other wing of the V-shaped downing hall. Maybe this is where the old science classes were held before the labs were built. I moved on to the next set of rooms. They were both classrooms, abandoned, dust-covered, and mostly empty. So were the next pair. I started to loosen my scarf around my neck as I tried to get rid of that feeling behind my neck creeping all the way down my spine. I continued to know it wasn't in my nature to turn around. I had to know. I wanted to see. They were all empty, dust covered. I saw a total of 12 disused classrooms in that hallway and a small break room, complete with a lonely coffee pot. I also found 2 small restrooms. I did not spend much time checking them out as the lights didn't work, and honestly I didn't feel like replacing those bulbs. I found myself getting nervous. I was in a strange section of the campus, and I was just walking around alone, working alone, being alone. I was completely and utterly alone that night. In the back of my mind, I just couldn't really justify the existence, the waste of a whole floor of unused classrooms. What could these be for? When I got to the end of the hallway, I met another steel door. I opened that one and saw another stairwell. I was fully expecting this stairwell to go up, to connect to one of the other main stairwells and Downing Hall, but the stairs only went down. Alright, let me just tell you, this is the point I remember at which I began to get scared. No way, no way, no way these stairs go down. How would anyone get down here? Here, the stairwell echoed at me. I should have checked the time. I should have been concerned with finishing my rounds. I should have been hungry for lunch. I should have run for my life. But I started to climb down the stairs because I had to see. The stairwell was unlit and appeared to be much older and in much worse condition than the others. And it was also longer, much longer. After a few minutes of walking down these steps, I began to count them. At every 12 steps, there was a small landing, a turn, and another set going down. I didn't think about it, that I'd have to come back up. After 10 landings, I reached around and found another door. It was unlocked and opened easily. The hinges squealed and the echoes died like lost things in the dark. I groped against the left wall for a light switch, and there was nothing. I checked the right wall, this equally smooth. I cast the flashlight around, but saw nothing. Nothing forward, nothing to either side, and nothing above. I snapped my fingers, listening for an echo. I may or may not have heard one. I slowly came to realize that the room into which I had entered was enormous, cavernous, possibly the biggest room I had ever physically experienced. I shrank back to the doorway for a moment. This room can't be here, I said to myself. I started to think about going back. Yeah, it took me all this time to think about going back. But I also started to think about wanting to know what was in that huge room. I took a hesitant step forward and then another, until I was walking steadily into the room. I kept a steady, even pace, counting my steps. I looked over my shoulder every few yards, using the light from the doorway to orient myself. I walked slowly for 100 yards, 200 yards, until I saw a dim glow ahead. Yeah, the glow got faintly brighter and larger as I walked towards it. Another 100 yards and another, and 3 more passed until I could make out a small dim light bulb near a door. Now this door was of a completely different type. It was huge, 14 feet tall at least, and half again as wide. The surface was black metal, studded with rivets and bolts mounted on huge hinges. Across the base of the door, graved into the metal, were words in some strange looping script that I could not recognize. Every surface was carved with that script, or with the strange diagrams made of splayed circle-ended lines. In the center of the door was a large, spoked wheel lock, and in the center of the lock was a tiny keel. A tiny keel. Above the keel was a sigil, enclosed in 3 circles. I looked behind me and could not see the light from the stairwell. Honestly, I couldn't see anything at all. I held the superhero keychain into the dim light and flipped through the keys. Of course, there was one small battered key that looked as if it might actually fit. I inserted it into the lock and turned it. I heard a click, and a thud. a sound from within the door like pouring pebbles or dry teeth. I pulled the key away from the lock and grasped the spokes of the wheel. My heart racing and sweat was dribbling into my eyes, dribbling slowly and blinding me for seconds and blurring my vision. I can't really explain how I felt. I turned the spokes to the left, counterclockwise, wider shins, some buried memories in my head said, and kept turning until the wheels stopped. There was another thud and a crack and then silence. The darkness behind me no longer felt empty. In fact, it felt positively crowded, as if I had an audience watching me. I stepped back from the door and flashed my light around, but there was still nothing. Dry, empty floor. I turned back to the door, grasped the large cast iron handles, and pulled. Nothing. I tried harder, putting all my weight into the pull, and at the last moment, at the end of my strength, I heard another crack, and the door groaned open. On a draft of cool, stinking air. The smell was heavy and moist, musky. I had a flash memory of my mother taking me to the zoo as a child and the smell of the cat house with the lions. At the thought of the lions, I let go of the handles and stumbled back a bit. I carefully shone my light into the yawning black crevice of the open door. I saw a short hallway that opened into a small, cramped room. I saw a filthy, rusted metal chair. I saw bones. Small bones, tiny bones. I saw or heard or smelled a form so black it seemed to suck in the light of my flashlight. I saw a black form rushing towards me, running towards me, filling the hallway, howling and laughing and speaking in a voice that sounded like mountains collapsing all around me. I remember fangs and words that turned my bones to rusted glass. I remember feathers and a hand with too many fingers jeweled with something unspeakable. And the smell, the stink of something long, caged. I remember wings. I do not know how long I wandered in the dark, alone under hundreds of feet of rock. There was no light. There was no way to judge time. My flashlight was dead in my cell phone, and even the small specks of luminescent paint on my cheap wristwatch were dark and lifeless. There was something wrong with my right leg. It hurt, but I couldn't see enough to find out why. I kept hearing my audience. There in that cavernous room, I screamed at them. I felt one of them touch my face, and I threw my flashlight at it. The flashlight bounced and rattled and became still. Somewhere that I was not. Something laughed. savagely murdered. Bodies splayed open, viscera missing. The teeth marks suggested a wild animal, but the murder scenes and body positioning also displayed a certain intelligence to them. There was also the writing carved into the flesh when it was not yet dead meat. The cops wouldn't talk about the writing. The police wouldn't talk to me either, not afterwards. When they first saw me stumble out into daylight, covered in blood, they assumed I was the perpetrator. They quickly changed their assumption when the medics pointed out the green stick fracture, the dehydration, the concussion, and the obvious shock. The police asked a lot of questions, and I answered as best I could. I told them about the door in the boiler room, but they couldn't find it. They showed me the bare, smooth wall from where I had crawled, dazed and broken. My tracks stopped at that wall. Two police tried breaking through the wall in that spot, only to meet old brick and older earth past that. Police wanted to know where the long black feathers came from, stuck to my clothes by dried blood. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. Oh, the police, the medics, nobody would look at me anymore. The scars on my face, the deep gouged out writing, was not a sight that most would want to see. I was marked. Whatever I had let out, whatever had killed and eaten 5 people, a week later 6 more had marked me as a friend. As a friend. Hello Moto by Nanetti Okorafo. This is a tale you will have to hear once. Well, you will only hear it once, then it will be gone in a flash of green light. Maybe all will be well after that. Maybe the story has a happy ending. Maybe there's nothing but darkness when the story ends. I cannot promise you any way for certain. We were 3 women. We had it all. We had goals, friends, hopes, and dreams. We had careers. 2 of us had boyfriends. We owned homes. We all had love, and we were happy. But then I made these wigs. I gave them to my 2 friends. The 3 of us put them on. The wigs were supposed to make things better, but something went very wrong, very, very wrong. Like the nation we were trying to improve, we became backward. Instead of giving, we took, like bloodsuckers in the night. Walk with me. This is the story of how smart women tried to right her great wrong. Dawn. With the wig finally off, Coco and Philo felt more distant from me, thank God. Even so, because it was sitting beside me, I could still see them clearly, clearly, clearly in my mind. Please, whatever you do, don't mix juju with technology. There is witchcraft in science, and science to witchcraft. Both will conspire against you eventually. I realized that now. And now my job was to work as fast as I could. It was just after dawn. The sky was heating up. I would sneak out of the compound while my boyfriend still slept. Even the house girl who always woke up early was not up yet. I hid in a hedge of colorful pink and yellow lilies in front. As I waited, I brought out a small sack and reached in, sprinkled cowrie shells, alligator pepper, and blue beads around the machine for protection. I was not going to take any chances. I sat down, I placed my fingers on the keyboard, shut my eyes, and prayed to the God I didn't believe in. After all that happened, who would believe in a God, any God? Philo had been in shows when the riots happened. I knew it was her and her wig, a technology I had created, neurotransmitters, mobile phones, incarnation, and hypnosis. Even I knew my creation was absolutely genius. But all it sparked in the north was death and mayhem. During the riots there, some men had, I can't even say it. Some men had even burned a mother and her baby. A mother and her baby. I didn't want to think of what Philo gained after causing it all. She never said a word to me about it. However, soon after, she went on a three-day shopping spree in Paris. We could leave Nigeria, but never for more than a few days. Oh God, I'm so sorry, I whispered. I meant well. I did. I meant well. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My teary eyes opened and I looked at my screen. The background was a plain blue. The screen was blank, except for one single file. I highlighted the file and pressed delete. I paused, my hands shaking and my heart pounding inside my chest cavity. It hurt, but nothing like the pain the wig had caused. Taking a deep breath in, thinking if this doesn't work, they will kill me, I whispered. I considered what they would do if I didn't finish. So many others would die. Nigeria would be in further chaos for sure. I continued typing. I was creating a computer virus. I would send it out in a few hours when they'd both be busy. Then all hell would break loose. For me, just me. Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. My name is Rain, and if I didn't get this right, the corruption already rife in this country would be nothing compared to what was to come, and it would be all my fault. The market. I am beast, I am lovely, I am in control, I was born beautiful, I am all knowing and powerful. All this Philo thought as she walked through the fruit and vegetable section of the open-air market. Around her, women slaved away. They sat behind tables and booths, selling tomatoes, peppers, plantains, goosey seeds, greens, yams, all those things that they would have to cook at home for their families after a long day at the market. Philo didn't live like that. She'd choose better. She had chosen better, and she will always choose better. She was above all of these people. She was above them. Philo was tall and voluptuous as she sashayed past women and men in her pricey high-heeled and brown, her high heels and brown designer dress that clung to her every inch. Her foundation makeup made her skin look like chocolate porcelain. Her eyes sparkled with the purple eyeshadow. Her lips glistened bright, sensual, pink, perfect, sexy, hot. And her wig was awful. A washed-out black with auburn frosted tips. It looked as if it were made of colored straw and sat on her head like it knew it did not belong there. Here, a woman said, running to Philo and handing her a roll of naira. My country's money. Take, please. You will make better of it than I. The woman paused and frowned, obviously confused by her own actions and words. Thank you, said Philo. With a chuckle, she grabbed the money with her long, painted nails. sighed as the laser shot from her eyes into the woman's eyes. The woman slumped, looking sadly at her feet. Oh, amazing feeling pulsed through her. Every time she did this, she loved to take from people, just taking them, whatever their essence of life had been, their soul, their hopes, their dreams, not just their money, but everything, their happiness, and give it to herself. Philo quickly moved on, leaving the tired, sad-looking woman behind. Pathetic, she thought. I will never be that. She passed a group of young men. They stared, and she stared back, zapping and taking, zapping and taking, and zapping and taking. Their ravenous looks grew blank and fell to the ground. Philo smirked knowingly. She felt amazing. She strolled into a booth where a man sold hundreds of Nollywood movie DVDs. She glanced over the array of colorful, dramatic covers where women and men scowled, wept, grinned, pointed, accused, laughed. I will take this one, she said, picking a DVD at random. She would watch it, yes. She would enjoy it, yes. But she would never have to pay. She would just take. The world was hers. Soon it would be, at least. She tucked the DVD into her purse and left the booth without paying. Of course, no one stopped her. As she stepped into the sunshine, she turned absolutely agaze, bearing the true love she had for herself out into the world. She knew everyone was looking right at her, just as she knew she was sucking the life from them as they stared. Her wig's heat increased and her brown eyes glinted a bright green. She smiled at the man who caught her eye. By the time he left this market, she would weigh down with a naira given and life juices stolen. Market by market, it was like this every day. Her cell phone went off. A male voice happily drawled, "Hello, Moto, hello, Moto." Then upbeat music began to play. Everything about Philo rattled as she stopped and lifted her phone. The jangling bangles on her arm were jingling earrings and her 3 gold necklaces. She was of clicks and clacks, shines and sparkles. "Oh, where is it?" she said, digging in her purse, mindful of her long manicured nails. Where? She pushed aside her lipstick, her unnecessary wallet, tissues, compact case, a bag of gum, wads of rolls of naira. Her cell phone continued going off. Laughing, she already knew it was. It was rain. The weakest link in the chain. She could tell by the ringtone. However, she could also tell why more than that. In her mind's eye, Philo could see Rain standing outside her compound, next to some flowers, holding her cell phone to her ear, waiting. Philo eventually found her phone, flipped it open and held it to her ear. It clicked against her long gold earring. "What?" she snapped, but grinning with all her teeth. For some reason, she heard nothing. "Rain, I know it's you. Say something now." But before she could finish her sentence, she felt it. A coolness that contrasted horribly with the heat of her wig. She frowned as the phone made an odd beeping sound. She held it before her just as the phone glinted deep green, similar to the ones of her eyes. When she sucked psychic energy from those around her, her phone buzzed, an electric current zipping across it before disappearing. Green smoke began to dribble from it. "Hey!" Philo exclaimed, staring at it as if she were smart. She'd have dropped it, but Philo is never really that intelligent, but very greedy. Unfortunately, Rain did not know this before, but she knew it now. A text message appeared on the screen, but Philo could make no sense of it. It was a series of nonsensical symbols. Rubbish. She dropped the phone, pressing hand to her wig. That bitch, she snarled, looking round with wide, enraged eyes. How dare she even try? In the sunshine, her canines they looked pointed. Right then and there, Philo disappeared into a flash of green. His house. Coco had just lit a cigarette. She leaned back on her plush white leather couch and crossed her legs. She held her glass of champagne up to the photo of her husband on the wall. He was out. He was always out working day and night for her. She laughed out loud, scratching under her itchy wig with her long, nailed index finger. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was sparky, dark and red, short. No one in his or her right mind would wear it. She got up and looked at a reflection in the glass that protected her husband's photo. Her skinny jeans and t-shirt fit wonderfully snug. Her face was flawless and her hair was power. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Blowing kisses to herself. She ambled into the living room where 2 fans were blasting. Oh yes, keeping her head and body cool from the heat of the wig. She stood very still between them, her wig's hair blowing about her face. Oh, it felt so secure on her head despite the blowing air. She shut her eyes and inhaled deeply. Behind her eyelids she could see. Then she began to draw it in from the busy street, people sitting in bustling bush taxis and perched atop hundreds of Akoda motorbikes. Market women walking alongside the road, the mishmash of old and modern buildings of Lagos, disabled beggars in the road, both playing soccer on a field. When she opened her eyes, they glowed a deep green and the wig glinted an electric blue. The blowing fans made the heat from her wig more bearable. Her cell phone went off and she nearly jumped out of her skin. Hello, Moto, it said as it played its dance music. What now? She muttered, but she was smiling. The wig, it always left her feeling so good and tingly. Yes, minus the heat, of course, which left the actual wig feeling like a burning helmet. But no mind that for what it bring into her life. She ran to her cell phone on the couch. It was Rain. What did she want now? In her mind, the wig showed Rain standing outside her compound looking worried. The woman always looked worried. She should have been at the top of the world. Coco held the phone to her ear as she brought out some lipstick. Hello, she said, smearing on a fresh coat. She grinned, sure of what she'd hear. She frowned. Hello, Rain. What is it? Speak up. Furious and annoyed that Rain did not answer her call. She heard nothing. She held the phone to her face when it suddenly became like a chunk of ice on her hand. Aye, she screamed, throwing it on the couch. As she stared at it, a bald cell phone began to dribble green smoke. A text box opened on its screen. Coco squinted, trying to read it. It looked like rubbish, but like Philo, Coco understood what was happening. Oh, Coco said out of breath, you want to play now, eh? Okay. She threw her lipstick on the leather seat. The lid slid off. Left a smear on the pillow. Someone will die today, and it won't be me. She disappeared. I have made my choice. That's why I'm still here, standing in these lilies. I wrung my hand over my shaved head, waiting. The sun shines bright and happy in the sky, unaware of what's about to happen to me, unaware of what I have done and will soon suffer the consequences for, unconcerned. Philo appears. She is standing on the lilies, mere feet away from her. she shouts. She looks beautiful and ghastly in her tight brown dress that probably costs more naira than a market woman makes in two years. Oh, Philo, fear pumps through my veins like adrenaline and blood. Why is your wig off? You look horrible. Her wig flashes as the digital virus tries to cripple it. But notice I say tries. I took it off, I snapped. This is wrong. This is all wrong. All of it. Wake up. See what we're doing. How many people we are destroying. How many lives we're hurting. We're taking and taking and taking. Philo chuckles. And what is wrong about it? We have everything we want, everything we could want, everything we'll ever want right in our hands. Stealing from people is not what I made these for. I made them to help us give back, to cure the deep-seated culture of corruption by giving people hope and a sense of patriotism. Remember? She stares at me as if I'm crazy. The wig has made her forget. No, tricky things, these wigs. Put it back on, she says, pointing a long nail at me. No, I said, it has made us cruel witches. Look at you. Coco appears behind me. She hisses like a snake. She has no mood for words. Her wig flashes. The virus is not working. When you mix juju with technology, you give up control. You have no more control. That is it. It's like rolling the dice. You never know what you're going to get. You are at the will of something far beyond yourself. I know I am done for now. See how it all ends, or does it begin? I'm watching them approach me now. I tell you, while my life hangs on its last thread, I am putting my wig on. It is so hot. I should have paid more attention to the cooling system when I made these. I hear the heartbeat of everyone around me, including the irregular rhythm of Coco and Philo's, but oh, the power. It rushes into me like a go down the throat of a drunk. See Philo bore her teeth. They are indeed sharp like those of a bloodsucker. The virus is working through her wig now, but something has gone very, very wrong. They're both smiling. For a year we have been psychic vampires, but now as they come at me, mouths open, teeth sharp, I see that they have become the blood-sucking kind. I feel my own teeth sharpening too as I prepare to defend myself. This is new, but I can't think about that right now. I tear the wig off and I throw it aside. Come then, I shout. Then the end. Faulty wiring. It was not long ago that I noticed a strange noise coming from the air conditioning unit in the wall of the living room. At first it was almost imperceptible from the other noises such a device would typically make. It started out as a slight clanking sound, only when it was first turned on. I had just accredited to the age of the apartments and the appliances within. Realistically, they were not all that old in the grand scheme of things. But without constant upkeep, things break down and fall apart relatively fast. Everything in the place made at least some kind of noise. The washing machine shook, the dishwasher sounded like a jet taking off, and the fridge would kick on every few minutes and hum so loudly I would have to turn the television up to hear anything over it. You can see how it was not such a big deal for the air conditioner to rattle a little, or that I wouldn't really notice it as something awry. I put into the back of my mind as just something that comes with age. second or two. I had better tell the landlord so maintenance can come fix this, I thought. After about a minute, it once again stopped, and the thought faded into memory. A few weeks passed by, and I began to notice other strange occurrences. Scratching in the walls. The electricity started flickering in and out. The occasional thump in the night. Again, things that could all happen due to the age of the wiring. Maybe a mouse had gotten into the walls, or a noisy new neighbor had moved in. All pretty explainable, I thought. Besides, I worked a lot, and I really didn't have a lot of free time to do much. So this did not bother me. But when things started to go missing in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, I started to worry. I had not been home in what felt like a couple of weeks. Besides to sleep and bathe, I forgot I should do a thorough search of the place and see where my things could have gone. The TV remote, a calculator, several pairs of socks, and one shoe. Just one, were apparently misplaced. So I went through room to room, which was really only 4 rooms, searching high and low to find my things. And as I did this, I noticed more and more small, ineffectual things were also missing. Strange, I thought. Where could these things have gone? I hit the power button on the TV and sat down in my once familiar armchair. Now a stranger in my own forgotten home, and noticed something. The TV was not on. I flipped the light switch up and down, but nothing. Oh, for God's sake, this is a little ridiculous. I got up and twisted the knob on the stereo. Nothing. I went around and tested all the appliances to see if they still were functioning. It was to no avail, as not a thing in the place was still functioning except, strangely enough, the increasingly loud air conditioner. It came on with a loud rattle and ran that way for several minutes until it sparked. I heard a loud pop, and then it too died. Maybe the power's out and it will be fine in the morning, I thought half-heartedly. I had a hard time sleeping that night. The neighbors were especially loud, and the being without power made me, well, a little bit nervous. I woke up the next morning to find that the power was still out. I took a shower, got dressed, and went over to my neighbors to ask if they were having similar problems. I knocked loudly several times, but there was no answer. I decided enough was enough and went to the maintenance office to complain and hopefully resolve this issue. When I opened the door, the smell of stale smoke swept into my nostrils. The place was a mess, papers and ashes all about the desk, peeling paint smudged on the windows, and a TV with only static bolted to the wall. Sitting behind the desk was a thin, graying man who looked as if he had not bathed in a week. I told him about how everything was suddenly not working but the AC unit, until it sputtered its last. He gave me a sarcastic look, and with a gruff he grabbed his toolbox and followed me back to my apartment. You see, I would have called, but for some reason nothing seems to be working, and I don't think the electricity is out because the air conditioner was running and suddenly died. Well, let's take a look at it, he said. He went over to it and unscrewed the faceplate and peered inside. He clicked his flashlight on and went to work unscrewing and checking different things when he stopped suddenly and pulled out a tiny thing attached to a cord that didn't look like it belonged. He looked at me with a raised eyebrow. Is this yours? I could not even identify what he was holding. I don't believe so. What is it? It's one of those little spy cameras. You haven't been having girls over, secretly taping them, have ya? He gave a sly grin. No, what the hell was that doing in my home? I was getting scared and a little rattled. He Let's see where this wire goes. He followed the wire with his hands and stopped to look inside. There's a little hole in here. It goes into the wall. He pulled out his hammer and got to work taking chunks out of the wall and following the cord. I was freaking out. Who put that there? Was this dirty old man watching me? Are there more of these? All these things went through my mind as I watched him work. Well, that explains a lot, he said under his breath. Well, what is it? I exclaimed. Looks like somebody rewired your outlets over here. He backed away to show me what he was seeing. But why? I guess stealing your power. You sure you didn't notice anything? His calmness put me on edge. I thought back to the odd noises in my wall. The thumping, the flickering lights, what had once seemed such a normal thing, and my heart racing. I don't know, I noticed a few things here and there, but I have not been here a lot lately. I thought it was because it was just an old place. Gave me a skeptical look and continued following the ever-expanding bunch of wires and cables throughout the place. Some wires would branch off to more tiny cameras, hidden in vents and just in the shadows. One was even wired into the eye of one of my pictures. How have I not noticed these? My heart beat faster and faster and palpitating out of my chest. As he discovered more, he kept going, and one by one found all my electricity had been rewired into one central bunch that led to the bedroom. My heart stopped. How long have these been here? Not long, I'd say. We checked all appliances and outlets before we rent the place out. Where does it all lead? He kept knocking holes with his hammers and following the dreaded cables until finally he stopped and looked into the most recent hole he made with a flashlight. The space between the walls gets a lot bigger here. I think I can fit in. I see something glowing just around the corner. He smashed a big hole enough for him to squeeze through the wall and disappeared into my bedroom wall. He appeared a few seconds later with a grim look on his face and his skin pale. He was no longer calm, apparently fearless man he was before. You aren't gonna want to hear this, but there's a little room back there. Bunch of monitors set up all over, all sorts of crap scattered around. Looks like somebody was living in there, but no signs of them now. He swallowed hard. This place is starting to freak me the hell out. If I were you, I'd move. I packed my things and left for my mom's that day, not wanting to spend another second in that place. Over the next few days, the police came and investigated the whole scene. They found 20 different monitors all linked to the VHS players in that little room in the walls. Surprisingly, though, no tapes were ever found, and neither was the thing that had been watching me all those nights. A few weeks had passed and a box arrived at my mother's doorstep. Unlabeled, no return address, but inside was a little things that had gone missing in my apartment. I also found a dirty, ripped piece of paper with a barely legible message scrawled across it. I like your new place much better. This is gonna be our last pasta. Creepypasta. Skype. I'm sure you have heard of Skype. I mean, it's a free instant messaging program allowing voice and web cam chat with people all over the world. I've been using Skype to keep track of old friends. We all went off to college a fortnight ago. Last week I was talking to Annie, a girl I used to go to school with. We'd both just moved into our flats. We were single, and the first semester had not yet begun. We found ourselves with plenty of time to chat. Usually we would Skype at least once a day. The stuff to talk about isn't hugely interesting. closing up Skype call, cursing the fact that I'd left my laptop on a massage my templates. To my temples, I stumbled out of bed. Hello, I said. My blurry eyes struggled to focus on the painfully bright monitor before me. Annie was, of course, dressed, made up, and smiling so bright. Sporting her new headphones, she gave a cheery wave, to which I responded with a half smile. Well, aren't you the life of the party this morning? She teased. You should have seen me last night. My dance moves put the whole club to shame. Big fish, little fish doesn't impress anyone. Hey, don't you have an introduction meeting with your tutor today? I glanced at my calendar, but the ink refused to stop squirming on the page. I assumed she was right, but even the small amount of sunlight that seeped into my gloomy domain under the curtains was eye-watering. Yeah, fuck that, I groaned. What about you? What are you doing today? Hoping to get a call from Erin. She just took off yesterday during a fire drill. She left a letter on her desk saying that she was going home. Which one's Erin again? I asked, half serious. Oh, you know, it's your friends talk about so many people that they just blur together after a while. And he made an unimpressed face. My flatmate, she lives across the corridor from me. She vanished. I mean, it's only been a day, but we were thinking about calling her parents just to check on her. I shrugged. You do it. Better safe than sorry, right? Before she could reply, there came the sudden shrieking of an alarm, and he said something which was drowned out by the noise, and I covered my ears, wincing. What did you say? I asked. She had to shout directly into the microphone. I said, that's the fire alarm. I better go outside, or the warden will have a fit and make us do the whole thing again. Oh, I understand. What time shall I call back? I asked, raising my voice as much as my pounding headache would allow. Don't worry, I'll only be gone for 5 minutes. I'll just leave Skype on. With that, she was gone, pulling the headphones off and placing them on the keyboard. After a few minutes, the alarm cut out. Thank God. The door opened, but it wasn't Annie. It was wearing a blue paint-stained boiler suit, a beanie-style hat, and a mask made from the bleached skull of some kind of goat or sheep. My eyes were drawn to its hand, however, a rubber glove wrapped around a hook. The kind you see behind the counter in a butcher shop. For a few seconds, I sat there, numbly wondering if this was Annie playing a creepy joke on me. Then I snapped into action. What the hell are you doing? What the hell do you think you're doing? Hey, you! I yelled into the mic. Who are you? But there was no response from the figure. Couldn't hear me. The headphones are still plugged into Annie's laptop. Instead, it simply stood there, taking in the room. Then, 10 seconds later, it began to approach the desk. I fumbled for my services. Which service do you require? Yeah, I need to talk. I paused mid-sentence. I had paused because the door had opened and Annie hurried inside. Her hair was wet from the rain and she smiled as she approached the webcam. I yelled as loud as I could for her to run and felt the tears pinching the corners of my eyes. Annie didn't hear me. She sat down, picked up the headphones, and began to adjust the strap length over her shoulder. The wardrobe door stirred. Hello, sir. Which service do you require? Sir, are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance?